During the 1970s, Hollywood unleashed a wave of films so shockingly vile and psychosexually twisted that they not only crossed societal boundaries, they obliterated them. From nuns being burned by priests, to a black woman hunted by rednecks, to nail-gun slaughters and fascist orgies, these movies made it onto screens before being banned, censored, or completely wiped from cinematic memory. These are the most depraved exploitation films that Hollywood would rather you never rediscover. Let's begin with a monumental example. The Devils is a film so fiercely controversial and outrageously extreme that, even decades later, the full uncut version remains nearly unattainable in most countries. Its very existence is something of a miracle. Directed by Ken Russell and starring Oliver Reed alongside Vanessa Redgrave, this film is part historical drama, part horror, and unapologetically unhinged from start to finish. The story is rooted in true events from 17th century France, focusing on a priest accused of witchcraft when a convent of nuns begin claiming possession. But don't mistake it for a straightforward religious drama. Russell dives headfirst into chaos, sexual repression, religious hysteria, and mass psychosis, throwing every element on the table without reservation. Imagine A Clockwork Orange, invading the Middle Ages and refusing to leave. That's the kind of experience this film offers. Faced with its extreme content, The Devils was censored, banned, chopped into fragments, and branded with the dreaded X rating. Entire countries have outright refused to screen it. Even today, Warner Brothers continues to withhold the film's complete version, treating it as if it were radioactive material. Let's dive into one of the most unsettling and grim offerings of 1970s exploitation cinema, Redneck County Rape. Originally released under the title Mallory, this film centers on Liz Wheely, a black pop singer whose journey takes a horrifying turn when her car breaks down in a forgotten southern town untouched by progress, where decay and menace lurk around every corner. Liz finds herself trapped in a dilapidated lodge named Bertha's Oasis, a place that reflects the worst of its name. Bertha, a former burlesque queen long past her prime, rules this rundown establishment like an unchallenged monarch of backwoods depravity. Amidst this bleak backdrop, Eddie, Bertha's boy toy, sees Liz as his path to stardom, but this mark of opportunity quickly descends into a nightmare. The film does not shy away from displaying unfiltered cruelty, sexual assault, psychological torment, and a pervasive atmosphere of violent menace dominate the narrative. Unlike slick art house chilling, the discomfort here is raw and unvarnished, delivering a visceral experience that's intentionally abrasive. Its alternate and brutally frank title, Redneck County Rape, captures the dark and filthy tone flawlessly. Critics universally recoiled from this horrendous vision. One Georgia reviewer even walked out, overwhelmed by nausea. This film doesn't just disturb, it assaults, embodying the era's most unforgiving exploration of exploitation's vile depths. Now, let's turn our attention to the crown jewel of big-budget exploitation, Caligula. This film holds a unique place in cinema history as both a historical epic and one of the most deranged spectacles ever to grace the silver screen. Backed by Penthouse magazine, Caligula boasted an all-star cast, lavish Roman costumes, and stunning marble palaces. But beneath its grand exterior, it plunged headfirst into a tidal wave of excess, full frontal nudity, copious bodily fluids, graphic violence, and grotesque court orgies. Critics tore the film apart. Many theaters refused to screen it, and most of the cast distanced themselves from the project as soon as it premiered. Yet, beneath this circus of depravity, Caligula had a clear purpose. It wasn't aiming for subtlety or artistry. It sought to shock, provoke, and offend, and it succeeded brilliantly. In this sense, the film embodies the very spirit of exploitation cinema in the 1970s, using its shocking imagery not simply for titillation but to challenge the audience's limits in the most explicit ways imaginable. Herschel Gordon Lewis's final directorial effort before stepping away from filmmaking for 3 decades was The Gore Girls, a film that perfectly encapsulates the joyfully deranged spirit of 1970s exploitation cinema. Shot in merely 2 weeks with a shoestring budget, it remains the only one of Lewis's movies submitted to the MPAA, where it promptly received an X rating, a label then reserved exclusively for extreme content deemed too graphic for general audiences due to its violent nature. The storyline kicks off with a reporter enlisting a private investigator to solve the murder of a stripper, leading viewers deep into a sordid underworld filled with seedy clubs, bizarre characters, and a parade of some of Lewis's most outrageous on-screen kills. The film balances between a tongue-in-cheek homage to detective noir and a chaotic breakdown of narrative form. Its gore is deliberately cartoonish, and the acting embraces a ridiculous flair, enhancing the sense of manic energy. Marketed boldly as the first movie to be rated X for violence alone, The Gore Girls lives up to its tagline with unapologetic enthusiasm, delivering a grimly hilarious spectacle that epitomizes the excesses of the exploitation genre. Directed by David Durston, I Drink Your Blood emerged from a challenge to create a film scarier than Dracula and cheaper than Frankenstein. Drawing inspiration from real rabies outbreaks and the chilling Manson murders, Durston crafted a gritty horror picture that became a cult favorite at drive-ins. The story centers on a group of drug-addled, Satan-worshipping hippies who terrorize a small town until a vengeful boy injects rabid dog blood into meat pies, feeding them to the cult members. What ensues is a low-budget apocalypse. The afflicted begin foaming at the mouth, convulsing, and turning on each other in brutal violence. This film blends the paranoia of 1950s horror with a wild grindhouse energy, encapsulating the grim spirit of 1970s exploitation cinema. The baby centers on Anne, a social worker who becomes involved with a man-child known simply as Baby. This fully grown adult lives like an infant, confined to a crib, wearing diapers and unable to speak. His troubling existence occurs within a family environment steeped in abuse and control, dominated by 2 sisters and a fiercely controlling mother determined to keep Baby infantilized. The unsettling dynamic goes far beyond gentle caretaking. One sister subjects him to cattle prods, while the other engages in disturbingly inappropriate behavior within his crib. David Mooney's portrayal of Baby is both committed and unnerving, capturing twitchy expressions and the total embodiment of a human infant. Watching the film evokes a strong sense that you're witnessing something profoundly wrong, an experience both creepy and discomforting. The Baby remains infamous for its disturbing subject matter and is considered an essential, albeit deeply unsettling, part of any exploration into the darkest corners of 1970s exploitation cinema. Just a warning, it's probably best not to watch on an empty stomach. On the surface, Death Weekend might seem like your typical hunting trip among old army buddies, 3 middle-aged men setting out to a remote cabin for a weekend filled with drinking, bonding, and shooting guns. But this is far from a simple outdoor getaway. What starts as a casual trip quickly spirals into a terrifying nightmare. Instead of hunting deer, these men resort to hunting people. They stop a car on an isolated country road, abduct a young couple, and unleash a slow, chilling descent into complete moral disintegration. Directed by Peter Collinson, who also helmed The Italian Job, the film maintains a cold, merciless tension that refuses to let the audience breathe. Death Weekend evokes familiar themes seen in classics like The Most Dangerous Game and Deliverance, but it carves out its own niche with its unsettling narrative and tight pacing. The story delves deeply into human depravity and the breakdown of ethics when faced with primal violence. The raw, disturbing nature of the movie is unmistakably designed to provoke and unsettle the viewer, and it certainly achieves just that. This visceral intensity is precisely what cements Death Weekend's place as a dark gem within 1970s exploitation cinema. A shadowy figure roams the streets of Los Angeles, haunted by memories of a fatal car accident, before embarking on a brutal killing spree targeting women in an apartment complex. The weaponry is as brutal as it is unconventional, starting with a drill, followed by a hammer, and then a screwdriver. The violence escalates gruesomely when the killer dons a ski mask and wields a nail gun against a woman soaking in a bathtub. What sets this film apart is its unexpected narrative pivot. After a teenage girl is abducted, the plot shifts into an amateur investigative mode, led by her younger brother's determined search for answers. The story then unfolds deeper layers, exposing family trauma, unsettling uncle figures, and intense religious guilt. This twisted exploration adds complexity beneath the sleazy surface. While the film revels in the gritty, exploitative style characteristic of grindhouse cinema, leveraging shock and discomfort to grip the audience, its evolving plot and psychological nuances make it oddly compelling. It embodies the very essence of exploitation films from the era, designed to make viewers squirm but unable to look away. Salò, or The 120 Days of Sodom, stands as the most infamous and harrowing entry among these notorious films. Set against the backdrop of Nazi-occupied Italy in 1944, director Pier Paolo Pasolini adapts the Marquis de Sada's original nightmare into a brutal cinematic exploration of power, submission, and unthinkable depravity. The story unfolds as four Nazi officials, aware their reign is ending, orchestrate a grotesque and twisted final indulgence. They kidnap a group of local teenagers and subject them to a relentless cycle of humiliation, torture, and sexual degradation, exerting absolute control in a chilling exercise of cruelty and moral decay. While initially presenting itself with the aesthetics of European art cinema, Salò quickly descends into depravity, leaving viewers confronted with graphic and unsettling images that challenge both limits and conscience. Its explicit depiction of violence and degradation led to widespread bans, censorship, and removal from public viewing for decades. To this day, Salò sparks intense debate. Some regard it as a profound political allegory critiquing fascism and authority, while others condemn it as one of the most disturbing and indefensible films ever made. Regardless, its notoriety cements it as a defining, if deeply controversial, artifact of 1970s exploitation cinema. Fight for Your Life is a low-budget exploitation film made during the height of the grindhouse era in New York. The plot is straightforward and plunges into brutality without hesitation. It begins with three escaped convicts who immediately steal a car from a pimp and head upstate. Along the way, they hold up a liquor store where a shootout occurs, and a teenage girl becomes caught in the crossfire. The gang takes her hostage and drives her back to her family's home. Once inside the house, the true terror begins. The girl's entire family is present: her mother, little brother, grandmother in a wheelchair, and eventually her father arrives. From this point on, the film unleashes relentless horror. Fight for Your Life does not shy away from cruelty or subtlety. It aims for maximum shock value at every turn. This unrelenting cruelty led to it being banned in multiple countries, censored in others, and for a long time, it was nearly impossible to see unless you obtained a bootleg VHS or knew someone who had one. The exploitation films of the 1970s stand as stark reminders of a cinematic era unafraid to push every conceivable boundary. Each of these films, from the religious hysteria of the devils to the brutal desperation of Fight for Your Life, unravels societal taboos wrapped in extreme narratives that continue to shock and provoke. Though many face censorship, bans, and outright erasure, their boldness and controversy ensure they remain pivotal in film history discussions, testaments to an age when nothing was too depraved for the screen. If you found this dive into the darkest corners of 1970s exploitation cinema fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more deep explorations. Like the video to show your support, leave a comment to share your thoughts, and don't forget to spread the word by sharing with fellow film enthusiasts.